What's new, 802? This is Becca Hammond, and you're listening to Burlington Talks. The Burlington Talks podcast may include graphic or explicit content. Listener discretion is advised. Hi, everyone. Today I'm talking with Dev Robinson. Dev works at Foam Brewery as a mover and a shaker. He also played upright bass and guitar with Vermont Joy Parade on several of their albums. And besides that, he's a Vermont native who's traveled the entire country in a veggie oil-powered school bus. Dev, tell me about yourself and tell me about how you grew up.
Sure, absolutely. So I grew up in Burlington as a teenager in the 90s. So a big thing about that era, like anywhere, was the music that was coming out of that particular place at that particular time. For a lot of people, it was Fish and the revitalization of the jam band genre of the Dead's torch. But for other people, it was punk and metal and hardcore. So growing up in Burlington at that time, 95, 96, 97, 98, it was basically going to a lot of the few places that I was allowed to go as an underage kid in the area, like a skater punk. There's 242 Main Street, which is part of Memorial Auditorium, which still stands. They're figuring out what to do with it. It's a tiny little sliver of property on the back of this massive building that naturally kids of all ages and would be packed into like sardines in a can to sweat and writhe and mosh and smack and hit and punch and kick all over each other.
So, 242. I just talked with the guys at Big Heavy World, James Lockridge and Bob Cahoon.
Perfect.
Who spent a whole bunch of time and effort helping put together a documentary video about 242 Main, which is incredible, and loads of effort has been gone into telling the city and telling the powers that be that we want to keep 242 active. We want something back in the same spirit, and we want money put into teen centers for music.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. It doesn't have to stand in that building. And I'm a Big Heavy World, although I don't know them personally, was a huge part of growing up in that scene. That's synonymous with that, which is also the next thing I was going to mention was Club Toast, which was this amazing but now defunct, seedy little club above, I guess, which is still Rasputin's on Lower Church Street, which was a haven for regional and local punk, hardcore, anything, avant-garde, even industrial at that time. There's a band called Chainsaws and Children. But there was Jesus Nut was a huge local band at that time. The Fags, which was Eugene Hoots, his like proto-Gogol Bordello bands. Then there was all the bands from Boston, Clutch, Sam Black Church, Tree, which I was a big fan of. You had the New Hampshire band, Scissor Fight. You had a lot of really like hardcore, really like hard raw energy. Obviously, it was the 90s. It was a lot of sweat and fresh out of fucks to give attitudes. And I guess we were, if you think about it, the Northwest is where all that grunge shit sort of incubated out of, and our little Northeast haven, we had our own little, style to it. So, and Burlington was a part of that for sure when I was growing up, and that was like sort of definitely the formulating of becoming a musician or wanting to be part of any sort of scene of music or culture or, it's that, it is, it's, and it's still happening here, not in the way I'm describing, but it's happening here and everywhere, it's still a very musical place.
See, I really want to bring it back. I'm trying to help the different community members who are trying to collaborate with each other. It's interesting to meet the different people I have. Because Matthew Seacard, I love the way he described the Guardhouse. He wants it to be like a think tank for musicians with all these different bands in the same area, just collaborating. And I'm going to be there recording interviews with all the different bands and just meeting people and helping spread the word about the different genres of music, the different people. Just helping each other out, the community helping support each other, and just bringing that wonderful vibe that Burlington has out a little more in the musical community. Because it seems like everyone's in their own homes, everyone's in their own space. And even the guys at Big Heavy World mentioned that we're not collaborating out in public as much. They kind of said that back
Sure,
20, 30 years ago, you'd go out and see all these different bandmates collaborating with each other. And now you're just not seeing that as much.
That was the 90s. That was this idea that, you know, which in the 90s was very much reflective of the 60s. I think wherever you went, there was this idea that it was crescendoing to something, you know, that was going to be more than ourselves, you know, individually and collectively. And whether that happened or not, I think like any generation, we're realizing that life moves on and things are reinvented and reformed. And I'm really glad that Big Heavy World is keeping that spirit alive, because there is this disparate space between the performer and the audience, and it's a necessary space and tension to exist for music to be what it is, both recorded and certainly live. But that is a thing that is cool to close the gap on. You know, it has its necessary space and time, but I think a lot of people want to be in a more enmeshed artistic community, like maybe some of our foremothers and fathers had, that was a little more in tune with not being so identifying with, like, of course you're a musician or you're a painter or you make coffee or beer or you're an electrician or a plumber, but really like finding those places where we fulfill, you know, other roles aside from the one that sort of seemingly assigned to us. I don't know. That's kind of the relation. I say that seeing a lot of people, even tonight, I've seen people at this party who I know are musicians and artists who've been around Burlington specifically, or in general for a while. They're a little older than me, in their 40s. And I know people paid their dues, and it's but they're also trying to pay the bills, and people have to find different ways to live and exist in the community. And so it's cool if you can make them synthesize, you know.
Right, yeah, bring all the different aspects of the culture here together and have them syndicate into one really profitable, really cool enterprise that is the community itself, just working together to bring all of the different cultural aspects to the people in a way that isn't just free. Like we make these great events, but the way we do it, sometimes we don't bring people in a welcoming way. Either they charge way too much for things.
Capitalism is, I was talking about this today, the drive for capitalism to be a part and commerce to be a part of our exchange with the arts and general society. It is what it is, and it's definitely heavy in Burlington. And I was kind of like kvetching to this today with my coworker, because I was talking about New Year's Eve event. And anyway, what I was bringing up was that there are some really great organizers, arts, music organizers and groups and promoters and marketers and bookers, the folks at Signal Kitchen and the folks at Waking Windows, and the folks at Arts Riot. And you're seeing a lot of really amazing, diverse talent brought in from the region and the world, as well as locally. And we're at the place, I know we were going to talk about this, but I work currently at Foam Brewers, or you did mention it in the intro.
Yeah.
So it's something that Foam does as just like, it's a brewery, we sell beer, etc., but we also sell culture, or we experience culture, and we are part of the community that is Burlington. And so we collaborate with those people specifically that I mentioned, Signal Kitchen, Arts Riot, in order to basically promote events and support local events and support the artists that they support. So
yeah, it's definitely already starting in the area. I feel like it could happen stronger, better, faster.
It has. It has. You haven't, or anyone hasn't. There's things that I personally and a lot of people have seen in specifically from basically 2005 to 2014. There's a very vibrant thing happening in Burlington and in a lot of places, but that was and that's fine. I think it is kind of like finding itself again. I think it's just it's important that we have artists and musicians, and we build a community to bring it back together.
Yeah, and just support it and not let the building fall down around the kids who are playing music. Like, that's just so ridiculous to me to think that, we'll give you this space and we'll just let it fall down. Like, that's not supporting the arts. That's giving a one-time donation and then forgetting about it.
I don't know. Should be more in tune with what is happening in terms of like local community groups for teens. For like art and stuff. I'm sure BCA. I'm sure the city's doing some cool stuff, but obviously there could always be more opportunities.
Not much right now.
Well, I can say that there's a fucking skate park. There's a fucking skate park where my entire life, being like a skater again in 1995, 96, 97 Burlington, we were like literally chased by the police. So it was like not pleasant. And so I think that was a lot of places in America. So I'm like happy to see that there's a skate park now. And there's a place for like teenagers to go and fucking skate. So here I am, 36, and I'm like, dude, I need to get that skateboard, get my Omegas, wake up early and go like reclaim, the thing that wasn't available to me. That would have been a great outlet for me to have this concrete playground to just do this kinetic thing, because everyone has kinetic intelligence, but if it doesn't fit into the format of American football, soccer,
right,
baseball, whatever, tennis, field hockey, etc., wrestling. That's my Han Solo, my traveling Han Solo I brought. Bespin, Cloud City Han Solo. Don't let that go on air, because my brother won't forgive me. Me and my brother, I have one brother. He's 5 years older than me, and we essentially grew up raised on, among other things, Star Wars, healthy doses. But he is the encyclopedia. He is the one who knows the lines, the quotes, knows the facts, knows the details. They don't get cloudy with him like they do with me.
Are you guys really obsessed with the Baby Yoda?
No, because we've been waiting on our new OLED or OLED TV to watch The Mandalorian, and he was supposed to get it on Black Friday. This is a whole other story.
Go for it. Why not?
I was like, yo, here's the deal. Like, we're going to wait on Mandalorian. I was like, do you have any idea? He does not have a Facebook account.
Oh.
Okay? So he doesn't fucking understand what we all face every morning. And I told him, I'm like, I'm not going to do anything to look up The Mandalorian, but it's going to be shoved in my face. And before I know it, through podcasts and through Facebook posts specifically, and through a news post where there was a thumbnail of Baby Yoda. I'm like, what? And so me and my brother already have this conversation. We haven't even watched Mandalorian, and these are two brothers who went to film school together, who grew up raised on this stuff, and we're just like, why is it being spoon-fed to us? And I hear The Mandalorian's great. I cannot wait to watch it. Cannot wait for the new TV to come in. It's literally supposed to come in any day now. But then we have to get the mount and mount it. It's a whole nother fucking story.
Just put it on the floor for a day.
I just cannot wait. We're just going to fire it up, and we're just going to watch whatever. It's probably going to be a week from now. We'll watch, all the episodes of Mandalorian. But we're also have been Star Wars out like everyone else, even though we're hardcore. I think we're all Star Wars out, and it's about to end. And yay, here we go. But I'm also a little sad.
Okay, so do you want to tell me about what you do when you are moving and shaking at Foam?
So yeah, I work. I run basically a small distribution company called Conscious Glass, and I essentially exclusively distribute Foam, our beer that we produce. That is normally exclusively available at 112 Lake Street Tap Room location. And we do all our can sales out of there. We're not, we don't distribute to retail outlets throughout Vermont or anywhere else. So I have various bars and tap rooms around the state that get small amounts, 6 barrels of, completely fresh, constantly rotating craft Vermont beer. Sorry, hold on a second. So yeah, in addition to that, I handle the distribution of the small amounts of beer that we send to basically festivals and events at select locations around the country, some in Canada and a few recently in Leeds in the UK and Berlin in Berlin, Germany, which I have to specify because there's a town in Vermont called Berlin. And I had more than one person when I told them I was sending beer to Berlin very excitedly say, "Oh, Berlin, Vermont." No offense on Berlin, Vermont, but
Not as exciting.
not as exciting as Berlin, Germany, which I've never been, but I have a very good friend and have always wanted to go. So essentially, there is our small little brewery here in what is known as a kind of haven of new craft beer evolution from the past 10 years. Is people are interested in the beer as far away as Germany, UK, and I've spoken with people in Spain and Japan, and we obviously, like a lot of breweries, have relationships with hop farms in New Zealand, as a lot of the hops that we're using in a lot of these New England style IPAs are really reliant on this abundancy of hops from New Zealand. So there's all these cool international relationships. So it's
Awesome. I think the craft brewery industry needs to combine more with the art and music industry and just sell everything.
Well, that is what, and I don't know if you have, and I should have brought actually some foam cans. That is really what foam has done and has tried to do, and it's really cool because there's 5 partners who own it, and I'm not one of them, but they all had a unique vision of kind of going beyond the kind of traditional mountain style brewery, just sort of hanging out having a beer approach. That hey, we're gonna be this hub of a place for artists. We're gonna have live music, and it's gonna be great live music. We're going to take care of those musicians. We're going to have a great sound system. We're going to have a great stage for them. That's essential. And that was essential with the planning of the tap room. And it's really paid off with the general attitude. And so with each release of new cans we have as well, there's a new artist, a new local artist, or an artist who has connections to the area, who's being featured on the labels, and it's a collaborative art piece basically built conceptually through the interchange between, the recognition of their specific art style, and, what we want to do with either the title of the beer or the spirit of the beer. The one that's being released actually tomorrow, it's called Together Alone. It has amazing artwork by insert here because I don't remember, but it's awesome, and it is really it's just a really good example of what we're trying to bring. Now the beer inside is great too. It's a hoppy, citrusy, tropical, hazy double IPA. It has lactose in it, which not all our beers do, but this one does, and it's very well advertised on the label.
How does that work exactly?
Well, so lactose is, or as sometimes it's just non-fermented milk sugar. It is used essentially to add sweetness and mouthfeel and texture. It builds that creaminess and softness. So it mixes well with beers that you've added any number of adjuncts into, like any type of course, chocolate or coffee or vanilla bean. But then, of course, it works really well with the creamy, citrusy, tropical flavors that either you're adding. We do both the hops we use, perform with those flavors, but also we use guava and starfruit and passion fruit and blood orange and lime, obviously, and many more. So when you interplay the lactose with those flavors, very similar to the way that you would have pina colada is cream and pineapple, and so it's sweet, but it's people who are lactose intolerant unfortunately can't enjoy those beers. So that's a bit of a rub on that side.
That sounds really interesting, though. Like, it might be really good. I'll have to try that.
Well, it's really popular in definitely a lot of the IPAs that you see in the area. But traditionally, I tell you milk stout, you don't bat an eye. You just go, oh, it's a milk stout. That's a pretty traditional European style. That's what it is. They're using lactose.
Okay,
They're
that
just
makes
using
sense.
unfermented. It's just a powder, basically. So, but so obviously works well with those flavors. But people started introducing them to sour and citrusy. But so together and alone, this beer that features this great artwork, it's a good example of bringing together the local artist, the name. The reference, which could be musical, it's typically musical, and essentially like putting it into a platform that people are going to buy anyway, right? Like people are going to go out and buy a 4-pack of beer.
Right.
Why not it be like great, like produced and also produced with it like entirely grains are grown and malted in Vermont by Peterson Quality Malt Farms in Charlotte.
Nice.
Which is another huge element to foam. That's a whole nother like story, but that is that in and of itself that we use. We're committed to using the 100% of the base grains of every recipe. To that is a huge part of why it's like it's all tied in. It's from the farmer to the artist to the brewer to the people,
right?
To myself who grew up here, who found myself working at a place like that. Like,
have you guys looked into Vermont hops at all? I know some farmers are starting to grow them here.
So we have. I wish I had a little more detail for you here right now, so don't put this in the
yeah, that's fine.
We've worked with some hop farms from Starksboro, and I like for some reason their name like evades me.
Oh, that's fine.
Which is insane. But we've also we've worked with UVM Extension farm program, agricultural program. They have a hop farm, and we've collaborated with them for the past 3 years on several series of fresh hop beers.
Awesome.
So that, in addition to the farm, these farms in Starksboro and some other stuff, I should have wrote down that stuff, but there is a lot of specific, really cool. I would like to name shot. We could even edit it in, but
you can come back at any time.
We had like this whole fresh hop series where essentially the idea was like most hops that you use in beer and that we use in beer and most breweries use in beer are dried. They're pellets, what's called pelletized, typically freeze dried. And that's a great way to preserve the hop. It preserves the flavor. It makes it available to ship because they are not always grown in the region that the demand of the people who are trying to brew beer are in, i.e. New Zealand to Vermont or Northeast Kingdom. But I would love to speak more to hops coming from Vermont, but I know that it is a thing now, that they used to actually be a thing a century or two ago, that there is land that's hospitable to it. And it does take some time to grow the vines, and you have to grow them manually like a wine.
Yeah, it takes several years before it really yields a good crop.
But there is some great farms, and we have been getting hops from them. And so the fresh hop beers are fun because They're not fun. They're like, hey, yeah, it's fun. It's jazzy. They're great because they add these like really cool, like very pungent. And when people say this, we say dank on a lot of tasting notes. People are like, what's dank? Well, I'm like, okay, come on, let's be real. Like cannabis and hops are a cousin, and they're very resinous. They have oils on them, lupulin oils or terpenes.
Yeah,
and so
they smell strong.
When that plant is fresh and it hasn't been like processed or dried, it's dank. So when you wet hop a beer, in addition to using pellets, but you throw in a bunch of this like fresh hops, like literally brought from the farm, and this happened just in August, like fresh from the farm. Oh, Champlain Valley hops, CVH, Champlain Valley hops. And they provided a large amount of amazing fresh hops for us. And so we fresh hopped a bunch of beers, and we had a whole series, and you can kind of like taste the flavors come through as you went along in the series. And some are more citrusy, some are more herbaceous, some are more earthy or dank. Some have, you know, the quality of like, which I really like, which is like musk or peat moss even, you know, which is something you get in like scotch. And so I'm a personal fan of like earthy flavors, and I love those connections of smells and flavors across sort of palettes and things we have in our life, from a tree or a bush to, you know, the gin we drink or the beer we drink, to cannabis, to the fruit we eat, you know.
Does Foam sell any sort of food? I feel like you told me this once.
We do. We've been strong supporters of food trucks and pop-up food shelves, and a lot of really great, really like bare bones, you know, breaking into the market, culinary folks, like Mama Juana. This is great. But it's like vegan tacos on Tuesday now throughout the entire winter. When they're like fucking awesome. They're so great.
Nice.
So that's been a big thing, but it's been announced. We announced it in Facebook and through 7 days that we're opening a restaurant next door, in our location in Burlington. So
what's it going to be called?
I don't know what the name is yet.
Oh, they haven't picked it.
We haven't picked it. I don't know if the name has been released. I don't think we've picked a name, and date is, you know, obviously still to be locked down. Hopefully, you know, when the snow melts, we will have a restaurant.
Nice.
And it's going to be awesome, but it's going to be an extension. There's going to be another bar and food and another place for people to enjoy what they already enjoy at Foam.
Awesome. I say awesome a lot.
I think that's awesome.
It's so awesome.
It's also pretty radical.
I was just going to say,
bring that back.
It's pretty rad. And also stellar. I heard stellar the other day.
Stellar's cool.
Stellar's a good word.
My brother says stellar, and he's very like, that's a word for him, stellar. It has a very like, it's like beginning and end. It's very punctuated, that word is.
I always liked right on. Right on, right on.
Right on. I like right on, right on. That's right, man.
I feel a little McConaughey.
That's a little McConaughey. But
right
yeah.
on, right on.
It also just shows that, like, hey, I'm cool with everything. I might not be listening to what you're saying, but I'm also going to play it off as, like...
I'm just going to say
cool,
right on.
Yeah, and everyone's got good vibes. The people who you're saying that to, you walking away from the situation, clean slate, no promises were made.
My favorite, and I have used it on multiple occasions, leaving a social situation that has been a little strange. You tell
just
people
once or twice.
It's been real, and you just leave.
That's very like stepdaddy. Like
it's been real.
That's
and then
like,
you just leave, and they're very questioning.
I feel like they know you are. If you say some weird line like that, they're like, it's gonna draw attention to you.
They're like,
here's how I do it.
This girl's got attitude.
I go. I just walk out.
I was
going
to say, you just silently sidestep away until no one sees
classically Irish goodbye. which hits a little too close to home for me.
Isn't that worse than someone telling you it's been real and casually walking away?
No, I would.
Would you read into that?
I would most definitely prefer someone just disappear from my fucked up, twisted evening than look me dead in the eye and say, it's been real. Because then I would be seriously concerned about whether I'm going to see that person again that night and whether I should have my mace on me.
I think you take it a little too seriously.
I'm just fucking around.
Yeah, I was going to say, I hope I don't threaten people when I tell them it's been real.
It's just, has it really been real?
It hasn't.
Has it ever been real? And if it was real, would you have said anything about it?
No, that's the funniest thing. It's usually the most non-real, most forced, awkward situations that I tell them. So it's been real.
We are getting to the meat of this bit here.
Yes, that's a lot of
sense. Yeah.
It's never been real.
It's funny. Some people like that. I'm like that. I like that meat in the moment when you're inferring to something larger. And I think that's something that has been kind of lost. This kind of feels, maybe I'm getting old, but kind of feels like the kids these days. No, it feels like there's like this larger dialogue and humor could be this like sphere of like really complicated, funny, interchanging scenarios, and I like that. I like that about.
Yeah, I like poking fun at reality, essentially, and a lot of people don't pick up on jokes I make.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's because they're the same people I'm talking about.
Yeah,
I don't know who these people are, but they're not my friends.
Oh, that's funny. So how long have you worked at Foam?
I've worked there a little over 3 years.
And before you worked at Foam, you returned to Vermont.
I did so much, yeah.
From all sorts of adventures. I want to hear about your adventures.
So, yeah. I came back to Vermont in 2016 after living in Texas for several years. I had 2 children while living in Texas. I met their mother while I was playing music with the Vermont Joy Parade at the tail end of a kind of arduous, beautiful, momentous, strange, psychedelic 2-month journey, which is our second journey on a school bus from Burlington, Vermont to the first case, San Francisco, California, the second time, Taos, New Mexico. But a long journey, this one in 2009, with a full 6-piece band, including other people. We actually had 2 buses. We had our friend who had another veggie school bus, and a bunch of gear. We had our wonderful Kylis, who is our piano or accordion player, Galen's son. At the time, he was 3 years old. He spent a week on us out of the 2-month tour in the bus with a nanny. So it was like, and this is a school bus. This is the largest school bus you could imagine. It's 40 feet. It's like 60, 70 passengers, I think, something like that. You take out all the seats and you redesign it. You have an empty floor plan, and so you get to build bunks in the back. You build 2, 2, 2, 6 bunks solid right in the back. You build little basic frames, all just like drilling with that was honestly, we salvaged a lot of wood, but buying the hardware, you have to buy hardware that sinks into steel.
Right.
And so you build a simple frame out, which is what we did. And we built a music closet for my upright bass, and guitars, banjo, accordion, miscellaneous percussion instruments, drum. We had a workbench. We had a actually pretty sizable wardrobe closet, because that was really important to the Vermont Joy Parade. Lots of 3-piece suits, lots of vests, lots of suspenders, lots of hats, and lots of costumes. lots of freaky, weird, psychedelic pirate shit, which had been like strung out, left over from the Jugtown Pirates, which essentially was the precursor to the band that we had sort of created out of that. So yeah, I played upright bass. We had a banjo, accordion player, who was also a piano player, of course, and a songwriter, a beautiful guitar player, piano player, songstress, Anna Pardenik, a trumpet player, a drummer, and we pretty much all wrote songs, shared songs, played traditionals, played covers, not too much. Tried to make them old. We were definitely well known for You Rascal You, our cover of a like 1914 hit. So public domain. It basically was. It was also that time where we were like trying to like find new old musical roots in America that reminded us about that connection between music, the people experiencing music, and it wasn't fancy, it wasn't inflated. We also weren't, trained musicians. We were kind of a bunch of, funky, weird hack personalities full of passion, and we brought our music to the streets, which means we bussed and we played our hearts out, all over the country.
And what was the genre, would you say?
Oh, so suspender fusion?
Can you describe that a little more?
That's the genre that we coined it as. I think the idea, I had to make the exception that like it's every genre of music except clearly like white like power like skinhead music. It's like skinheads wear suspenders too, but it was supposed to be essentially just it originated with I think the origins of what I understand to be early blues music led into what would be, I guess, bluegrass on a more fundamental level would be known as jug band music, sort of assembled instruments, people really like building their own instruments, which I think is a large part that we overlook about musical history. Even just 100 years ago, it's like you didn't have a fucking guitar center, you didn't have a local shop. Like, how did you get a guitar? How did you get any instrument? Obviously, there was like master crafters and luthiers of, instruments that are, orchestral and put on like, pedestals. But the simple instruments, I guess, certainly like guitar or a drum set or a tambourine or banjo, those things coming around to like the common people, that's the story of early folk American music. And that was, I think, where we wanted to begin our story. And we went from there,
Nice. So what were there was 2 albums that you recorded on?
Yeah, we did. We had 2 albums. Our debut album, the Vermont Joy Parade, Kicking Sawdust. I thought it should have just been self-titled, the Vermont Joy Parade, but we all agreed to have Kicking Sawdust added to it, which is it's a term, an old antiquated term about following like circus around. You're kicking sawdust. You're essentially, whether you're a carny, whether you're like working for the circus or whether you're following them. I guess that is another big element of the Vermont Joy Parade. I might have mentioned the element of circus, the element of vaudevillian performance. I wasn't part of that. I was a back player. Benjamin Strasberg, my friend and our fearless leader in the Vermont Joy Parade, Captain Benny Pants. He's a juggler, a balancer, a magician. He's a general, like, schemer. No, that's not right. He's a general, like, master of many things. It's the opposite of, like, master of none, jack of all trades. He's, like, actually a master of many things. And he used to bring a lot of beauty and magic. And that was what the Joy Parade was about. And it was sort of tied into that early feeling of troubadour vaudeville shows. I think it was a lot of what other people we're doing too, which is romanticizing things that were outside of safe, provided for us structures, maybe, of suburban, lifestyles. Is our own way of rebelling. I think it was all tied in, and I think that music still, it's still part of, every day. I mean, it's no matter what year you're in.
So what was the second album called?
That's right. The second album was called New Anthem, and that was exactly what that album should be called. And that's a really wonderful album.
What was that one like?
So New Anthem's interesting. Kicking Sawdust Kicking Sawdust was recorded in Cuesta, New Mexico, in northern New Mexico, which is a really magical place for those folks who have been there. It was recorded in 3 days, maybe, and it was essentially recorded old-style bluegrass around a mic or two, old-fashioned ribbon mics. For those who know, just like it was so beautiful to even see this thing come out of the case. This like gazillion-dollar mic.
I was gonna say not cheap.
Not cheap, but you don't want anything to happen to it because you want this thing to be there to pick up the pristine, natural sound. Like, if you're an audiophile, if you're into this stuff. So the album is fucking phenomenal, and it's kind of chaotic, and listening to it, even the first time we all listened to it as a band, we felt so removed from it. We were like, is this even us? It sounds so like it's like the Muppets on acid shot back in a time machine. And so this was really important because we recorded it, the producer, answer fucking name, I forget, David. We recorded it onto tape, 2-inch tape, and it was sent to a presser in Chicago, and it was pressed onto vinyl, and that was a very expensive thing to do, and we spent most of what we had in personal and professional funds to make that happen, because we knew if we could go out with that album and sell that, and to have that. And I can say that personally, hearing yourself, hearing your group, hearing your songs, hearing your sound, hearing the thing that you pressed into reality as art in this timeless physical format, that is phonograph, that is vinyl, that is analog sound pressed through sonic waves into a physical medium, i.e., whether it's a vinyl record or whether it's rust and tape and metal tape. I find that so fascinating, and I think we still do, because we're still obsessed with, even though we're in a digital nation, we still are obsessed with this analog world that is literally it's only a couple decades ago. It's not even that far away, but we act like it's insane. That was the thing, is I guess Kicking Sawdust we pressed onto vinyl. I still have the few of the only existing copies. It's very raw. It's has two traditionals, You Rascal You and 5'2". These are songs from the teens and from musicians who wrote them mainly from New Orleans. And the rest are all originals. New Anthem is all originals. And New Anthem shows this sort of typical sophomore growth in a band where the voices of the people who are writing the songs are becoming more coalesced and idealized. You have Benny on banjo, who's writing very banjo-driven bluegrass. He's very inspired by The Dead and Robert Hunter.
And where was Benny from?
Benny is pretty much from here. He's from New York. Benny was one of the members of the Jugtown Pirates, which were causing a lot of havoc in the early 2002 and 3 and 4s in Burlington, Vermont, just taking acid and running around and probably sleeping with other people's daughters and just being, they're good. They're just they were following the dream, right? The Grateful Dead. And there's a couple other musicians, really talented musicians. I don't know if I should bring them up. Oh, of course, there's Jugtown Pirates, Paul and Toby, and Django. and they were all really great too. And they kind of spearheaded this. They were playing like they were just playing like wash tub bass. Benny was playing washboard, mandolin, guitar. You know, that was sort of like that band had existed, and a lot of our friends knew them. And after they basically essentially took a bus and fucked off to San Francisco, because that's where we should all fuck off to at the time, Benny came back and was like, I don't want to fuck off anymore. It's too insane. It's too chaotic. There's too much psychedelics. There's too much fucking. It's too sweaty. It's too smelly. And anyone who might be listening to this who knew the Jugtown Pirates would probably agree with me. And so he was like, I want to get my own bus, and I want to do similar songs, but I want us to like rehearse, and I want us to like
be a real band.
We want to be a real band, and we want to like really give it our all, and like not be so much influenced on partying, which was Benny's thing. And was honestly most everyone's thing. We were very dedicated, and so again, Benny brought that element. He was a songwriter, wrote some of basically or most amazing, the great hit from the Kicking Sawdust is Ferrisburg, going down to Ferrisburg. And Galen is someone who Galen Peria or Duke Airplane. He plays accordion, piano. He's someone who we met from hanging around in the Radio Bean, and who's from Ticonderoga, New York, and who quickly grew into just basically a brother. He's another soulmate. Everyone in this band is a soulmate, I think. His songs are extremely orchestral, extremely very, very precise in the words he uses and how they're written. They tell a story. They're operatic sometimes. 3 of really amazing songs he wrote were used in the Spielpalast Cabaret of 2009, and it's kind of lost to the memories of people who remember. It Might As Well Be May, which is the closer to Kicking Sawdust, was used in that, and it brought a new level to the songwriting that I think he was showing. So and that's not to even the biggest of them all was Anna Pardenik, who basically I met before everyone I mentioned and inspired me to be a musician alongside her and play her songs along with her. She was really the light of the band in a lot of ways, the heart and the soul. And she's still in New Orleans and I think pursuing her career, but
where was she from?
She was from New Jersey, but lived in Burlington in early 2000s, came up here. Odd group of people who I wouldn't have met if I didn't because they weren't locals.
Right.
They were all kind of like in a different scene than I was as like a local kid coming into my 20s. And then I was like, kind of like at that point where I was like, okay, I have all my friends from high school. They're doing their thing. I kind of like want to what the fuck's going on in this weird coffee shop that just opened up, the Radio Bean, that opened up in the year 2000.
Right.
Year 2000. And
they just celebrated a birthday.
19th, because it's just what the year is. The 20th is going to be next year. It's easy to remember. But it was a burgeoning bubble of, people just a really a skewed, sense of art and music and a lot of freedom and just being out there. And so to bring it back to talking about the second album, that was where these people, along with myself, because there's 2 songs including a single that called Can't Really Know, which is written by myself. So along with myself, we were all songwriters in the band, and we were voicing, because we were bringing these songs to the band, and then they weren't even, it wasn't like it was your song. It was the band's. Anna and Benny sang almost everything together. Galen crooned. Ben Aylshire, who I haven't even mentioned, who also wrote a few great songs and was a great trumpet player and frontman, and is now is a poet, traveling poet.
Cool.
He's traveling basically like all over Europe and residing in the French Quarter, I believe. But so all these elements came together that were the Vermont Joy Parade. Not to mention Dan, our drummer, who is the rock of everything. But I think Dan, if there was an opportunity, probably would have had a song. But with the exception, all other 5 members of the band were authors of songs that were on the album. So it was one of those collaborative things. It wasn't this like
right
lead person. And that was something that was intentional, unintentional, came together naturally and felt like what we wanted to do because it represented the spirit of folk music.
So did you ever do a parade?
Yeah, the Vermont Joy Parade, if you talk to anyone who was around the Vermont Joy Parade, that they would probably just laugh in like a joyful way if you asked them that question. The entire existence of the Vermont Joy Parade was a parade. So, yes, we actually literally paraded, but we also, good Lord, we stormed through the streets of Brooklyn in a Halloween show, which was one of the most insane things I've ever seen. People just filling the streets with the most elaborate costumes, parading through hotels in Manhattan, parading through New Orleans, parading into Austin, Texas, parading into Luckenbach, Texas twice until we got kicked out, which is a real badge of honor for me, for those who know about Luckenbach, Texas. Parading all the way to San Francisco, stopping in Taos, New Mexico on the way, and then parading all the way back to Burlington, Vermont, and doing it in no less than 4 buses over a period of 8 years, burning through every amount of resource and renewable resource that you could put in its way. The names of the first 2 buses were the Zeitgeist Apparatus and the Zeitgeist Apparatus the second. So I think that states a lot about the Joy Parade. It was a Zeitgeist Apparatus. So that was the joke with the parade. It was a parade, but it was also a parade of a lot of our songs were like any other songs. They're songs of lament. They're songs of death. They're songs of disparaged lovers. They are, it's the thing that we like to obviously bring up almost too on brand is the Schadenfreude, the German word for essentially gaining joy out of someone else's sorrow. That was the joke with the Vermont Joy Parade. The parade was a parade not of like senseless joy being, celebrated for, some like annual reason. It was the parade of constant humanity that is existence as a human, as an artist, the thing we're all trying to say. Which is why that was a name we landed on after having several different names. And that name said to us, I think, everything that we meant, from the sorrows, from the basically from the uplifting joy of coming together and singing music and celebrating your life, but of also the sorrows that you're singing about and that you're processing and that you're living through as every human being is. And what else is music and songwriting and storytelling but the means to process our trauma and our personal experiences of often sorrow and loss compounded with love and, things gained. But that was an underpinning thing also, that everyone in the Vermont Joy Parade was like 25 years old and fucking crazy at the time. We were all like depressed and crazy artists, and there was no joy. Like, that's a joke, like yeah. But there was. When you saw us, we had glitter, we had top hats, we were hanging out of our school bus, painted red, coming to your town screaming with masks on, despite all the pain that we were going through as individuals, and everyone is going through no matter what, and we're still going through right now. It was a reason to buck all that and come together and listen to music. And that was, more than anything, the Vermont Joy Parade.
That's awesome. Can you tell me where you can listen to the music? Where would be the best spot to go if you went online?
Yes. Unfortunately, we're not on Spotify yet. We need to figure that out. Although Duke Airplane and the Raw Numbers, which is essentially an arm of the Vermont Joy Parade, his album Higher Ground is on Spotify. Please listen to this album. This album is some of the most amazing, honest, within the past 10 years written music, I think, that embodies like the swamp melancholia, frustrated, a little angry, a little riotous, a little sexual, a little holy spirit that is Duke Airplane. And I'm proud to be featured on that album and proud to play with him still. The Vermont Joy Parade still has our Facebook page. I believe our domain is shut down. And we are still on Bandcamp, which is where you can get our 2 albums, which you can also get Anna Pardenic solo album, Porch Ship, to bring it way back, and the Anna Pardenic and the Holy Smoke Off, another side project featuring members of the said crew. So, yeah, those are basically Bandcamp, Spotify, Facebook.
Yeah.
I mean, you can just Google Vermont Joy Parade and you'll see a bunch of pictures of us doing circusy weird shit and sweating and being in, like, you can see me in, like, a really small vest with, like, weird facial hair, sweating. I was looking at one earlier today just being like, wow, who is that person 10 years ago?
So to bring it back around to foam before we end, are there any events coming up?
Foam. There's so many events. There's events, like, happening every GD night. No, there is upcoming. It's really cool. Highlight is the New Year's Eve event happening in Burlington. This is basically for folks who grew up in the area. Remember First Night. This is what has taken place with it. Run by the folks at Signal Kitchen, and it is basically multiple events spread throughout Burlington on New Year's Eve, starting obviously in the daytime with all ages events, leading up into the night with various shows. I mean, it just goes on. I can't even, you just look it up, highlights. So we are partnering with several locations, Vermont Comedy Club, Metronome, and Sugar Snap Kitchen is going to be catering several events, and a couple other places. Oh, the Flynn Space. Just they're going to be having events, and we're co-sponsoring those events and providing our beer. Excuse me.
Awesome.
So that's kind of part of what the deal is. It's like it's a co-sponsorship. We put up funds to help the event happen. And then we also, provide or sell basically them the beer, but we make it happen so that it's a fully like featured, organized event in which Foam is clearly not someone who is just having the beer or the alcohol there, the drink that you're holding in your hand, but that drink is part of the entire sphere of supporting the arts. Like from the bank, from the money, from the intention, from the sponsorship, from the everything, like just what it means to put your name, to attach your name to something. And I'm not talking about this specifically. I'm just talking about everything we do. But this is obviously a great, like, hey, it's New Year's Eve. Like, let's have a bunch of great events and have a bunch of really cool, like, beer. We're actually making a beer just specifically called Horizon Lines for the highlights it's a collaboration with this, for this day. So
special beer.
It's a special beer. It's actually an 11%.
Wow.
Like Imperial IPA with citrus. So the idea is it's supposed to replicate. It's going to be sold in a bottle, but we're also going to do draft pours of it. It's supposed to replicate the experience of like don't think of like the mimosa you get at like, fill in whatever bistro. Think of like this dank, like mango blood orange mimosa with maybe like a spiker of vodka in it to really crank it up. That's sort of the concept. So it's stuff like that, which is really cool. So that's certainly happening on New Year's Eve, but we work with Arts Riot. We sponsor a show every month. There's one show that's going to be co-sponsored by Foam that's going to have Foam exclusively available, and that may or may not have a actual can that we have a can called Canvas, which is a pale ale. Its traditional form is a blank white matte finish label, and that can be released as, it's a canvas. It's the basics of inspiration. But when we do collabs and events, as we have with Arts Riot, we will do a specific can with art for that event. And so we'll release it at the event. So again, it ties in the consumer experience, I think, and the artist experience of like being part of like, it's adding a dimension to that local experience, right? Of like being at an event that's happening at a moment.
So are they just one of a kind? You're not going to see them ever again? That's the idea.
You're not going to see them again.
Right.
Yeah.
So you don't want to throw your can away at the end of the night.
No, you could keep the can. Right now there is, I believe, I want to say 6 and running. Don't quote me on that. But different canvas cans from local artists. Maybe there's 4 to 5.
Collector's items.
They're extremely collector's items.
That's really cool.
Absolutely. So that's the type of stuff. All our cans are beautiful pieces of artwork. And again, they all have, the Instagram handle of the artist on them. So essentially someone can hold the can and they can get turned on by the art, immediately have access to that artist's profile and life and market, as well as then drinking our beer. It's like literally like, how else could you package, like any type of local economy, and something that's cool. So it's a twice or thrice fold, and that's important for us, for it to be that,
Awesome. Okay, so we're going to have links to everything we talked about on the show notes page.
Nice.
So if you're curious about anything we just discussed, you can go on to Burlington Talks, find this episode, and be hooked up with the link right to what we were talking about.
Awesome.
Thank you very much for being on the show.
Yeah.
We're going to end it here. Have a great night.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Head over to burlingtontalks.com to see the show notes page. There'll be links to anything we talked about and more info about the podcast itself. You will also be able to find transcripts on each show notes page for the episodes. Contact me by sending an email to becca@burlingtontalks.com. That's Becca, Becca. Find me on Facebook at Burlington Talks. Please subscribe to the podcast and share it with your friends and family who live in the area and who you think would be interested. Thanks again for listening, and that's what's new in the 802.